tickets and stuff.
Look, Lighthouse. Windy day.
This tower is 800 years old, but there has been a signal fire here on the Hook Peninsula since the 5th century. That started over 1500 years ago by monks who came across the sea from Wales, and one monk in particular by the name of Duvaughan. Duvaughan was the first Welsh monk to light a fire outside on our rocks, light up the peninsula and keep this place safe for ships and for sailors. He was made a saint for doing that, St. Duvaughan. We get our tour started in a building called the Watchtower. It's around at the front of the lighthouse. It gives us a look at some of the views, and it gives us an idea of why we really needed the lighthouse here at the Hook. So if you want to follow me over. Yeah, if you were a famous wreck when you went down, man, you got issued one of these red dots if you had more than 100 people on board. If you were a local fisherman from Feather, from Dunmore East, from Kilmore, and you went down with your friend Tom and Mick, you didn't get issued one of them red dots. So there's a lot more boats down there that you can just hit. It's a great place for whale watching here in the winter months. Now guys, this building is actually the most modern part of our tour. This building was built in the 1970s when we first got our electricity here at the lighthouse. The lighthouse keepers, they came down out to the big tower for the very first time, and they started using this building to control everything from in the 70s. It was called the Watchtower as well because it gave you an ideal chance to keep watch on what was going on out on the water. Although you were not an official Coast Guard, you didn't spend your days in an Irish lighthouse unless you kept an eye on this mess out here. There is 3 seas that meet in front of the Hook, not just one sea. There's the Celtic Sea, straight ahead of us. There's the Atlantic Ocean that comes the whole way from New York in America on the right. New York City is 5,000 kilometres away. And there's the St. George's Channel that comes from England, France and Europe on the left. Now wherever you get different seas meeting, there's no set borders, but you get an awful lot of tidal currents going on, especially under the water that you can't see. There's a big river estuary here on our right hand side. It's called Waterford Harbour, and if you can see through the mist, that's Waterford County at the other side of the river. Waterford Harbour isn't fed by one river, it's fed by 3 rivers. We call them the 3 sisters, the Nore, the Barrow and the Suir, the 3 big fine rivers. When the 3 sisters join together, they push an awful lot of river water out here. You have heard of these 2 places. One of them is the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, and the other one is Cape Horn in Chile, Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire. They're the 2 most dangerous places in the world to sail around. The Hook Lighthouse is number 3. And to give you the paperwork on that, so you don't just think I'm telling you guys a story, from the Hook Lighthouse all the way off to Kilmore Quay, the next fishing village over this way, all this coastline is known as the Graveyard of 1,000 Ships. There's more than 1,000 ships in this graveyard. It's just called the Graveyard of 1,000 Ships. Why there's so many boats down here? It's not just the bad weather and the storms. It's also the amount of people that pass this place. For over 500 years, this was the busiest shipping lane that the world has ever seen, or ever will see. All of our families and ancestors who left Dublin and Belfast, emigrate to America, had to pass this lighthouse. New York is that way, 5,000 kilometres away. Guys, I've done some research into the Graveyard of 1,000 Ships, and I've seen the passenger lists off all these shipwrecks, and I can tell you that every one of our family names are included on them passenger lists, and there's more than just Irish, English, Scottish and Welsh names down here. There's names from all over the world, so unless you come from Mars or from Pluto or somewhere, you've got connections to the Hook Lighthouse. Everybody is connected to this little place. In 2012, we modernised and updated the tower. We put computer signals into this place for the very first time. And since 2012, we're one of the 7 lighthouses on the planet that now throw them computer signals worldwide. Our computer signals have been picked up as far away as New Zealand. All the modern day boats that sail around today
super oil containers going by, cargo boats bringing their cargo up to Bellevue and Morseworth, local fishing boats, super oil containers. This fellow out in the mist, if you can see him, guys, there's a computer on the bridge of that boat. I mean, this signal is specially used today when there's bad visibility. That man's computer, that captain's computer, is searching for our signal. When it finds our signal and locks onto it, the captain of that boat can walk up to his computer, press a few buttons, a storm can blow up out of nowhere, a bank of fog can come down on top of him. At the touch of a few buttons, he can navigate himself through the fog and the storm, to Boston in America, to Sydney in Australia, or to Liverpool in England. All from them computer signals that we put in 2012. Before 2012, we didn't have computerized technology. And this was our most important tool at the Lighthouse. Now, I know it doesn't look like a computer, but this did the very same job for 30 years. It was the foghorn station, the early warning system, and this big whistle used to stand outside on that square of concrete facing out to sea. And when it got stormy and foggy here, this fella gave a double blast every 45 seconds. And it used to go... I used to love it when I was a little boy coming out here on a Sunday, especially if the weather was bad, because I'd meet my friends around the foghorn. And when this thing sounded off, it was so powerful it used to shake the ground. And we used to say, it's an earthquake coming, it's an earthquake coming. I'll never forget the sound of this thing. It cracked the lights for everybody who lived on the peninsula. As I got older, I used to do another stupid thing. And I used to, when she sounded off, I used to stick my head in it this way to impress the ladies. And now when I'm watching the TV with herself at home, she tells me, would you ever turn the TV down? Ha, ha. The things you do to impress me for guys, okay? Now, if you want to follow me over, before you go, when you go home, I don't care what part of the world you live in, just have a little investigation and use some of the tools that I tell the young people to use here today. When you're standing in your kitchen at home, ask Alexa, what's the closest lighthouse to my kitchen? Perfect. Whaleboats strung around the place. One of the old white wolves that used to stand up at the tower. If the boat blew, it fell down and brand new boats stood up at the place. So it's kind of like an automatic rechange.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
I just went to the right and through there. A very family-orientated job. Irish likes wanted your family to stay on station. It was not like being kept a prisoner, but you had an awful lot of responsibility on your shoulders. The big walls here weren't to keep the sea out like you think. They were to separate you from the public. It was gated off, and you had a security guard to double and make sure the public would not annoy you. The Titanic passed this lighthouse with 2,000 souls on it. We have record of that in the watchtower. It was your family's responsibility to make sure that light was operational daytime and nighttime. The 2,000 people on the Titanic were on your shoulders, so you couldn't have your friend Paddy from up the road coming in here. Did you see that game of football yesterday, John? And come on, we'll go to the pub for a few pints. You had a lot of responsibility on your shoulders and you had to stay on station. So if you want to follow me over. Yeah, so you're quite tall, you have to watch your head in here. These monks were 4'7" at the standard height, okay? We're going into this dark room at the bottom. It's a little bit dark, but the lights will get you. Look, talk. Holy moly. Yes, that's some job, aren't they? Holy moly, they're beautiful.
Now guys, this level was called Liberty Hall, and this was an accommodation floor for the lighthouse. The monks and the lighthouse keepers that came after the monks, they used to live on this floor. Now I know you guys have seen the white buildings outside where the gift shop and the restaurant and the centre is. That was the principal keeper's house and his family, and the assistant white keeper's house and his family. If you and your family worked for Irish Lights, you were given one of them houses outside to live in to work in. The problem was, them houses were built in 1860. Now I know 1860 sounds like a long time ago, but 1860 is only a blink of an eye when you're talking about this tower. For 600 years, before any of the buildings were built outside, everybody lived in the lighthouse. They used these big fires for heating. There's cooking ovens here in the walls, connected by chimney to the main chimney to bring the smoke out. Whereas if you can see this big picture over the top of the fireplace, this is a depiction of one of the New Ross tapestries. There's 2,000 of these tapestries. The story I'm telling you guys today, I didn't make up. This story was told to us by the monks 1,500 years ago, and they used tapestry to tell us that story. This is how they had it looking for the first 500 years. When the monks went out to Wales for the first time by boat, it must have been a bit rough that day. They loaded the coal into boats, they brought the coal back to Slade Harbour and miled up the coast. They loaded it onto carts, they pulled the carts out here using cows and cattle. When the monks got called out here to where the lighthouse stands today, they just built a single story platform at first. They lit the fire on top of that single story platform, and over time they surrounded it with a steel brazier to protect it from the wind and the weather. This setup lasted the monks for 500 years. Right, it got us to 1207, still more than 800 years ago, and that's when William Marshall, the Lord of Leinster, got involved in this place. But before I get on to William, today we've got iPhones. And if we see anything interesting, look, we've seen it out there, click, I take a snapshot of that one. Great people on tour today, click, that one's one on Facebook. What colour shoes did Johnny put on this morning? And I better take a quick selfie of myself. We did have iPhones 1,500 years ago, but we could still take snapshots. That's what the New Ross tapestries are. They were needle and thread work, not even a painted picture. You had to be very artistic and very creative to do this, but you did the very same as what an iPhone does today. You captured a moment in time. Very important for us guys. Some of our symbols and our colours were all taken from the New Ross tapestries. You guys won't be up on our hurling and football colours in Ireland, but every county, guys, has a different hurling and football team. Okay, if you're from Dublin, you wear the Dublin blue. If you're from Cork, Cork Rebel red. If you're from Limerick, Limerick green. If you're from Kilkenny, you wear the black and amber stripes. If you're from Wexford, we wear the purple and gold. All them colours are actually taken from the New Ross tapestries. I'll bring it a bit further with you guys. Our symbols are very important. The heart, the shamrock, the tricolour, our Irish flag. If you're from America, the Star Spangled Banner, the Union Jack. If you're from Canada, the maple leaf. Our symbols have a way of spanning history, guys. They're very important to us. There's another one of them symbols in this room, and it's this red lion on William Marshall's breastplate. This one signifies Richard Lionheart, the Red Lion, the King of England. Richard Lionheart had two brothers, King John, Richard's brother, England's most notorious king, and another brother of Richard and John's, Henry III, the White Lion, also known as the Boy King of England. Them are the three most important kings England has ever seen. So important that we still see them three English lions today, 800 years later. If you ever watch England playing soccer, they're on that soccer shirt. If you ever watch England playing rugby, and they're playing Italy today, they'll have three lions on their shirt, guys. See that I'm saying? Our symbols, this little lighthouse symbol, okay, people will know what the US that lighthouse service is in a million years time, guys. Our symbols are very important to us. William Marshall, the same man who built the lighthouse that you're standing in today, he bodyguarded all three of them English lions, and another two English kings besides. For me, this man, William Marshall, is the most important man who ever stood on the planet. Have you ever heard his name before, guys?
No.
I can hear the gears going around in there. Okay. I've done over 10 years of research into the Lord of Leinster, and I could spend 6 hours talking to you about him. And I'll only get his fraction of his lifetime across to you guys. So I'm going to try and condense his story for you, and I'll tell you why I think this man is the most important man the world has ever seen. He was born in Wiltshire in England, the fourth son of a very wealthy nobleman, and he quickly realised he was the fourth son because William was last in line for the dinner, last in line for the pocket money, and he was going to be last in line for the castle. At the age of 7, William Marshall decided to go to France and to train to be a Norman knight. These Norman knights were the fighting men of the day. William's training in France, it took 9 years until he qualified to be a knight, and he was granted his sword. William stayed in France and he joined a little thing called the European Jousting Circuit. These knights used to tour Europe back then, laying on jousting festivals, a little bit like the rugby and the football clubs do today. But this jousting wasn't just entertainment for the people. It kept the knights' battle skills sharpened, and this is where William earns another one of his titles, the greatest knight. William Marshall went through 500 recorded jousts. He was never beaten, never defeated, and never once even knocked out of his saddle. He became the superstar of the day, and if the Lord of Leinster gave you his word was stone. After 500 recorded jousts, the King of England stepped in, a man called Richard the Lionheart. Richard the Lionheart said, "I'm the Red Lion, I'm the king, and William Marshall won't take the glory away from me. He won't win 501 jousts unless he defeats the King of England." William Marshall and Richard the Lionheart jousted, and Richard the Lionheart found himself on the flat of his back that day, looking up at William Marshall, him be defeated for the first time. William could have killed Richard the Lionheart there and then and taken the crown of England for himself. Under the rules of the tournament, that would have been allowed. But William was a very smart man, and he knew that Richard the Lionheart was more than the King of England. He was also connected to the French House of Power, and France had the biggest house of power on the planet at this time, and William Marshall knew that Richard the Lionheart had some pretty important brothers. So he drove his sword into the king's horse, because the tournament demanded a death, and he yielded to Richard the Lionheart and saved the king's life. Richard the Lionheart said, "I have to get this man looking for me. I've never been beaten before." And he gave the Lord of Leinster a job, top bodyguard to the King of England, Richard the Lionheart. For the next 43 years, William Marshall stood beside England's kings with a 6-foot Scottish claymore sword. He didn't only bodyguard Richard the Lionheart, he bodyguarded 5 English kings. When he defeated Richard that day, Richard the Lionheart said, "I'm going to have to do something else for William Marshall than just give him a job." And this is the Lord of Leinster's connection to this lighthouse. He said, "I'm going to have to arrange a marriage for William with the most powerful lady I can find." That lady was a lady called Isabella de Clare. She was the Lady of Leinster, the Lady of Pembroke, the Lady of Normandy. Isabella de Clare was a man called Strongbow's daughter, Richard de Clare's daughter, the Lord of Leinster's daughter. When Strongbow died, all the Strongbow's land and power fell down onto his 17-year-old daughter's shoulders, and it made Isabella de Clare the most powerful young lady in Europe. Richard the Lionheart also knew that Isabella de Clare was a man called Dermot MacMurrough's granddaughter. Dermot MacMurrough was our last Irish High King, the last Irish man to rule all of Ireland together, Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connacht. Nobody's done that since Dermot MacMurrough 1,000 years ago. Dermot had red hair like I used to have when I was a chap, and he passed his red hair to his granddaughter Isabella de Clare, the Lady of Leinster. The Lady of Leinster was so famous for having red hair. The lady's red hair is said to have flowed down to her knees, and Isabella de Clare's beauty was said to rival the beauty of Helen of Troy. If you know who Helen of Troy is, that put Lady Isabella as a pretty stunning looking woman. Richard the Lionheart arranged a marriage between William and Isabella de Clare. He knew she was Dermot MacMurrough's granddaughter, and these two started a dynasty together, a hidden dynasty that lots of us have not been told about. William Marshall and Isabella de Clare had 5 sons and 5 daughters that all had their grandfather Dermot MacMurrough's red hair. They passed that red hair down to their sons and sons and daughters and daughters and sons and sons. I've chased Dermot MacMurrough's bloodline, our last Irish High King, through his granddaughter Isabella de Clare and the greatest knight William Marshall for 375 years, until I reached another one of England's mighty kings in the 1570s, a young man called Henry VIII, the Tudor king. He was also famous for having red hair. I wonder where he got that from. He was also famous for having 6 wives. All 6 of Henry's 6 wives have official blood ties to William Marshall, Isabella de Clare, the Lady of Leinster, and more importantly Dermot MacMurrough, our last Irish High King. Dermot was called the Yellow Belly, a coward for giving Ireland away on a beach 2 miles up the road from here. Dermot McNamara was not a coward, and those Wexford men are still yet called yellow bellies 800 years later. Guys, okay. Dermot McNamara was not a yellow belly, he was not a coward, he was a bit of a visionary. He knew that his red hair was going to end up in the court of Henry VIII, the Tudor king, 375 years later. Guys, there's a little programme on the TV these days that not everybody watches. It's called The Game of Thrones. It has 170 million fans across the planet. They will tell you that J.R. Martin got the idea for The Game of Thrones from somewhere else. Nobody will ever play The Game of Thrones better than Dermot McNamara, our last Irish High King, his granddaughter Isabella de Clare, and William Marshall, the greatest knight. And if you have red hair, be very proud of that red hair, because that red hair comes from one of the greatest countries on the planet. But that's not why I think William is the most important man the world has ever seen. And it's not because he built the lighthouse you're standing in today. William Marshall built the town of New Ross 800 years ago, the first bridge over the river in New Ross. He built St Mary's Cathedral in New Ross for his lady. William Marshall built a place called Tintern Abbey. William Marshall built Kilkenny Castle, Carlow Castle, Ferns Castle, Feather Church, Hope Church, Temptown Castle. He built Pembrokeshire Castle in Wales, Carmarthen Castle, Brecon Castle, Chepstow Castle, Bristol Castle, Cardiff Castle, Carmarthen Castle, and the Lord of Leinster built a little castle in England called Dover Castle. Dover Castle is the most important one. People actually asked a 14-year-old fella who left school too early, why is Dover Castle important, John? Because for 500 years before Westminster Abbey, where the Lord of Leinster is laid to rest with one of his sons beside him, Westminster has been the English House of Power for 500 years. Before the place where King Charles III received his crown 6 months ago was the English House of Power. Dover Castle was the original English House of Power. That was built by the Lord of Leinster, William Marshall, the same man who built the lighthouse you're standing in today. If you research Dover Castle like Johnny did when he was 14, the professors from Trinity College will tell you, John, you have to stay in school. We all know Henry II built Dover Castle. What are you talking about? Henry II was the king when the man who stood beside him for 43 years, the man who built the lighthouse you're standing in today, William Marshall built the English House of Power, Dover Castle, guys. But that's not why I think he's the most important man the world has ever seen. Why I do is because 800 years ago, the King's bodyguard wrote a little piece of paper for me and my 10-year-old boy Jimmy, for everybody in Romania, for everybody in America, for everybody in Wexford, for everybody on the planet. A little piece of paper that we're starting to take for granted that can possibly come from Ireland, a little island nation, no connections to royal lineages in our country, no important people here. The little piece of paper that Lord of Leinster wrote 800 years ago was called the Magna Carta. That's the piece of paper that allows me to stand up in front of you guys today, in front of a classroom of students and speak what I want to speak, the truth, freedom of speech, which I think is a very important thing. It's also the Magna Carta that William Marshall signed 800 years ago. His signature is the very first signature, before King John the Black Lion, before Pope Innocent I. His signature is a little signature on the piece of paper that allows me and my 10-year-old boy Jimmy to live a free life. I enjoy living a free life, and I know you guys do too. It's also the little piece of paper that allows us to vote for all the stupid politicians that we vote for today. You can't blame this man for stupidity. Stupidity wasn't a disease 800 years ago. And if William Marshall was around today with his 6-foot Scottish Claymore sword, a lot of our Micheál Martins, our Vladimir Putins, our Joe Bidens, our Donald Trumps and our Richie Sunaks will be missing their heads, guys, because he did not write that piece of paper for politicians. He didn't write the Magna Carta for the 3 English lions on an English football shirt, or so I would talk about him 1,000 years later. He wrote that little piece of paper so my 10-year-old boy Jimmy, so your children and grandchildren could live free lives. That's why I think the Lord of Leinster is the most important man who ever stepped onto the planet. Please don't take a 14-year-old fella who left school too early. William Marshall has his own Wikipedia pages, and Dermot McNamara's granddaughter has her own Wikipedia pages. If you want to read about the real people who played the real Game of Thrones, if you want to tell your children and your grandchildren really where the freedom and democracy comes from, please read them Wikipedia pages, guys. Like the New Ross tapestries, sometimes we're not told about things that are very important to us, and sometimes we're not told about people that are very, very important to us. These were the most powerful people who have ever stepped onto the planet, and if you'd like to follow me up. Thank you, guys.
Hit my head. That's why I'm weird.
Look, you have a red hair like me as well. Holy moly, my lady princess. Here we are.
feel with the fire going.
Well, guys, believe it or not, people say to me, John, that William Marshall fella down there, he must be a hero or something, is he? You do an awful lot of mouthing and talking about them. Although I think without doubt that William Marshall is the most important man who ever stepped onto the planet. He's not my hero, guys. My heroes are the men and women who wore this uniform for 170 years. These are the people who guided our families. You sit down where you are, ladies, you're okay. Who guided our families to the new worlds, America and Australia. These are the men and women who for 170 years took our grannies and granddads, our brothers and sisters, our aunties and uncles out to the graveyard of 1,000 ships down here. We are all connected to that graveyard. These Irish men and women, they did not care what colour your skin was. They didn't ask you what language you spoke. They didn't ask you what flag you fought under, what uniform you wore, or have you got any money in the bank before we pull you out of trouble. If you were in trouble outside this lighthouse and you were sat beside the King and Queen of Spain, you were treated the very same as they were. You were treated equally like a human being. I've done as much research into the Irish Light family as I have into the Lord of Leinster William Marshall. And the biggest lesson I passed down to my 10-year-old son, Jimmy, is what I was just talking about. The equality that these Irish men and women showed as human beings for 170 years. I wish we could bring some of that equality forward into our 2024 world. These men and women, they did not have the computers we have today, satellites, radar, or sonar to make their jobs easier, but they were still very, very successful using the tools that they did use. A family, a community that relied on each other, respected each other, trusted each other, and loved each other with eyes on that water every day. I know that computers and satellites are very, very handy, but you can unplug a computer, you can never unplug your family, so please help me if you will. Talk about these men and women with your families and your friends. Tell your children and your grandchildren stories about these people. We can't pay these men and women back with money. There's not enough money on the planet to pay these people back for looking after our families. We can't pay them back with medals. They deserve more than that. We can pay them back with stories, so we never forget what these men and women did for our families. Guys, I'm not allowed to tell you about the experiences I went through with these people. I'm not supposed to talk about tragedy in case you guys are caught up in them tragedies. I'm not supposed to talk about war or politics. I think if we don't talk about these things, we forget what these people did for 170 years. If we don't talk about war, we never learn any lessons about war, and we still have a lot of lessons to learn, guys. Okay, I'm not supposed to tell you about the days and days, nights and nights of constant searching 2 times a day for sometimes lost causes. I'm not allowed to tell you about the families we put back together, the families we searched for, the families we never found, the children that I cried over, the children that Thomas Tweedy found and gave back to their families, guys. When my heroes walked down these stairs in 1996 on the very last day, before Thomas Tweedy locked this building for the last day, when all our Irish Lighthouse is fully automated, he didn't want a fortune in redundancy money, he didn't want a new job, and he didn't want a new house for him and his family. He wanted one thing to happen in 1996. He wanted Irish Lights to dedicate this lighthouse to Irish heritage. You guys are Irish heritage. I work for you guys, so I'm giving you your lighthouse today. Please bring it home with you guys. Use your lighthouse, the world's oldest lighthouse, as your family beacon, as your guiding light. This place has got me and my family, the Irish Light family, and it will get your families through very, very tough times. But don't forget the most important thing about today. The world's oldest lighthouse, the Hook Lighthouse, belongs to you guys. From all the research I've done into different things, I found out that lighthouses are more than just lighthouses. They connect country to country, they connect coast to coast, they connect county to county, and they connect people to people, guys. But don't forget the most important thing, the world's oldest lighthouse belongs to you guys. And if you'd like to stop me, there's a little extra for you guys. Have you been to Sandy Hook yet, man? Sandy Hook is America's first and oldest, 1780, 1790. You'll have to get this into your passport. A lovely Georgia mansion house beside it, a windmill shape, a little bit different for a lighthouse. If you ever get lucky enough to go to New York City, guys, go out to Jersey, go to the top of Sandy Hook, and it's a great place to look, view the New York skyline. Maybe one day when I win the lotto.
Just good.
Now guys, this was the fire level that the monks carried all the coal up to for 600 years. From here on up is all 1700s, to all the lens room, the nice bump view on the ground and all the modern day equipment. So for 600 years the monks had one big open coal fire on top here. They had to stay off the brandy. No safety rails them days, and whoa, you'd be gone out over the side. No brandy allowed. Monks were plentiful, health and safety was non-existent. How times changed, now we can't find a monk and health and safety has gone through the roof. I hope you guys enjoyed your tour today. I hope you take some memories home. But remember the most important thing about today, the Hook Lighthouse is your lighthouse. This is your Wexford connection, guys, and it will always be here for you. Have a lovely day, take some pictures, and I'm going to see you guys at your lighthouse again someday. Thank you guys. Have a look around, and when you're ready, thank you guys. It's my pleasure, okay? Thank you. And when you're ready, we'll head back down. Have a look around. If you want me to take pictures for you, no problem, okay? Thank you guys. No worries, buddy. Now, stand there beside the rail if this lady. Yeah.
Alright girls, let's go before the authorities get us.
I think that light for now light has to go around and around so you can see it.
It does.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, yep. Totally. Oh yeah. I don't think that's a birdhouse. Could be.
Yes, flare legging. It's my gold mine. Not gold, my copper mine. Flare legging, on wool legging. It's probably a bat house. Don't push your but I gotta go a little. Careful, Mom. No, this be super tough. Oh, let me go on further.
What?